Have you ever felt like your mind is constantly pulled in 100 different directions? Notifications, messages, endless to-do lists, until even silence feels impossible. You wake up every morning already behind, already distracted, wondering where your focus and your time have gone. But what if the problem isn't that you're weak or unmotivated, but that the world around you was built to steal your attention? This video is an invitation to pause, to breathe, and to remember what it feels like to be fully here. Because when you learn to take back control of your attention, you don't just work better, you live deeper. Let's begin. 1. Defining your personal mission. I want you to imagine this. Every morning, you wake up, grab your phone, open social media, and start scrolling through hundreds of posts, thousands of faces, millions of other people's words. And by the end of the day, you feel drained. Not because you've done too much, but because you don't really know where you're going. I've met so many people like that, both in my therapy office and in everyday life. They're not lazy, not low on energy, not stupid. They're just lost. And when you don't have a direction, everything becomes a distraction. Have you noticed? When you don't know exactly what you want, anything can pull you away. A text, a call, another video. You start reacting to life instead of living it intentionally. But when you have a personal mission, even just a single honest sentence, every choice in your day suddenly becomes much simpler. I remember once, a patient of mine, a woman in her 40s, came to me and said, "Life just doesn't feel meaningful anymore." She had a stable job, wonderful kids, and yet she felt empty. So I asked her, if you could write one sentence that describes what makes you want to get up in the morning, what would it be? She stayed quiet for a long time and then wrote, "I want to be the kind of person who makes my children believe that life always has hope." Just one sentence. But from that day on, she began to change. Whenever she felt tired, she read it again. Whenever she had to make a choice, she asked herself, "Will this bring me closer to my mission?" That answer became her compass. And I believe every one of us needs a compass like that. A short sentence, but one that reaches deep. Not something you think others want to hear, but something that truly makes you feel alive. As a psychologist, I can tell you this. People can't sustain long-term focus unless it's tied to something personally meaningful. Science calls it purpose-driven attention. When you have a why, your brain naturally prioritizes what matters and filters out the noise. So tonight, I want you to try something. Sit down, turn off your phone, and write just one sentence. I exist to... Don't overthink it. Write from your heart. Print it out. Stick it above your desk. Make it your phone wallpaper if you want to. Because it's not just a sentence. It's your personal declaration, your guiding star in a world that's always shouting for your attention. And one day, while everyone else is still chasing motivation, you'll smile because you already have your mission. And it's not motivation, but mission that will carry you all the way to the end. 2. Friction design. Let me tell you a little secret about the human brain. It doesn't like discipline. It loves quick rewards, easy, pleasant, and effortless. That's why staying focused is so hard. You can set goals, even have a mission. But if the environment around you is designed to pull you away from it, you'll still lose. I call this idea friction design. A simple concept, but incredibly powerful. Imagine this. Every time you try to work, your phone lights up one tiny notification. You plan to ignore it, but your brain releases a little burst of dopamine. What if it's something important? So you tap it. Just 5 seconds, right? But you've just lost 30 minutes of deep focus. And that happens hundreds of times a day. That's not a lack of willpower. That's bad design. When I work with clients or students on mental productivity, I always tell them, redesign your environment, not yourself. If your phone is the gateway to distraction, create friction, keep it out of reach, turn off notifications, or even leave it in another room. Want to read more? Leave your book open on your desk, right where you usually sit. Want to work out in the morning? Put your sneakers by your bedroom door. The less friction between you and what you want to do, and the more friction between you and what distracts you, the easier it becomes for your brain to make the right choice. I once had a client named Alex, a creative designer, talented, but always feeling unfocused. When he described his workspace, I realized it looked like NASA's mission control. 3 monitors, 20 tabs open, a phone, an iPad, a smartwatch, all buzzing with notifications. I told him to try 1 week of reducing friction. Turn off every notification, use only one screen, lock his phone in a drawer. A week later, he came back smiling. He said, "I didn't realize I was this smart." The truth is, he'd always been smart. His intelligence was just buried under too much noise. You see, sometimes the problem isn't you. It's the world you've built around you. If you want to change your life, start by changing the space you live in. Let your room, your desk, even your phone stand with you, not against you. Because in a world fighting for every second of your attention, the winner isn't the one with the strongest willpower. It's the one who knows how to design the right kind of friction. 3. The power of absolute single tasking. Have you ever tried doing 3 things at once? Answering emails, listening to a podcast, and secretly checking your phone? You feel productive, right? But at the end of the day, nothing's really done. Just a tired mind and that lingering sense of half finished. That's the illusion of productivity. One of the most deceptive traps of our time. The human brain wasn't built for multitasking. It only switches rapidly between tasks. And every time it switches, you lose a little energy, a little depth. Neuropsychology studies show that each time you jump between 2 tasks, your brain can take up to 20 minutes to fully regain focus. That means 1 quick glance at your phone could cost you half an hour of quality work. When I used to consult for a group of creatives in San Francisco, there was a guy named Ryan, incredibly smart, always bragging about his super multitasking powers. But his projects? Always unfinished. So I asked him to try one simple experiment. For 90 minutes, do only one thing. No extra tabs, no music with lyrics, no phone. He laughed and said, "I'll probably lose my mind." But a few days later, he came back and said, "I've never felt my brain this clear." That's the power of single tasking. When you give your mind one clear target, it goes deep, and depth creates value. 1 focused email can solve an entire problem. 10 distracted ones only create more chaos. I want you to try a simple ritual. Before starting any task, set a timer for 50 minutes. Close every other window. Tell yourself, just this. Just 50 minutes. And while that timer runs, don't worry about anything else. That's not just discipline, it's respect. Respect for yourself and for the work you've chosen to do. When you learn to focus on one thing at a time, you'll feel time stretch, your work deepen, and your life quiet down in the best possible way. You start to feel present again in your work, in your relationships, even in your own breath. Because in the end, you don't have to do everything. You just have to do one thing, but do it completely. 4. The mathematics of time. Let me ask you something. How much time do you think you lose every day to things that don't really matter? 5 minutes checking your phone? 10 minutes watching a random video? An hour scrolling social media just to relax for a bit? It sounds small, doesn't it? But let's do a little math. Something I call the mathematics of time. Say you waste just 2 hours a day on your phone, social media, or other low-value distractions. 2 hours doesn't sound like much, but multiply it out. 2 hours a day is 14 hours a week. 14 hours a week is over 60 hours a month. And 60 hours a month is more than 700 hours a year. That's almost an entire month of your life. Gone. A month you could have spent learning a new skill, writing a book, or simply living more deeply. Instead, it quietly slips away with every swipe, every scroll. As a psychologist, I've seen the shock on people's faces when they calculate that number for the first time. They realize they were never short on time. They were just leaking it, bit by bit, without noticing. Like a small hole in a water tank, you don't hear it, you don't see it, until one day the tank is dry. Now imagine gathering back all those lost hours. In 1 year, you'd have an extra month to read, to love, to build something meaningful. In 10 years, you'd gain almost a whole year of your life. So let me ask you, what would you do with that year if I could give it back to you right now? This question isn't meant to make you feel guilty. It's meant to wake you up. Time is the only thing we can't multiply, can't borrow. And every minute spent on something meaningless is a minute paid for with your own life. So tonight, before you go to bed, write down one line. How many minutes today did I lose to things that don't nourish me? You don't have to be perfect, just aware. Because awareness is the first step toward taking back control of your time. And when you do, life begins to expand literally. 5. Temptation bundling. I want you to imagine this. There's a part of you that wants to move forward to exercise, learn new skills, finish that project you've been putting off. But then there's another part, lazy, cozy, that just wants to curl up under a blanket, watch a show, or scroll a little to relax. And every day, those two parts fight. Guess which one usually wins? The lazy one. Not because you're weak, but because the human brain hates effort without an immediate reward. That's why I teach my students a fun little technique called temptation bundling. It's simple. You take something you have to do something you usually procrastinate on and pair it with something you love to do. For example, only let yourself listen to your favorite playlist when you're jogging, or only watch your favorite show while folding laundry or cleaning up. Or like me, I only allow myself to drink my favorite coffee when I'm writing or researching. It sounds small, but the effect is huge. Behavioral science calls this reward pairing. When you link a difficult task to a pleasant feeling, you're tricking your brain into building better habits. A study from the University of Pennsylvania found that people who used this method were over 60% more likely to maintain positive habits after just 4 weeks. So you don't need to force yourself to be disciplined. You just need to make effort feel rewarding. I remember one of my students, Sarah, who told me she hated cleaning her house. She said, "Every time I see the mess, I just want to move somewhere else instead." I laughed and told her, "Then try pairing cleaning with something that makes you happy." A week later, she came back beaming. "I cleaned the entire house just because I allowed myself to listen to my favorite true crime podcast while doing it." She turned temptation into an ally. So if you're struggling with discipline, remember this. You don't have to fight your desire for pleasure. You just have to redirect it. Pair what you should do with what you love to do, and one day you'll realize that discipline isn't a battle anymore. It's simply the rhythm of a life that finally feels good to live. 6. Protect your focus environment. Have you ever noticed that casinos have no clocks, no windows, and the lighting always looks exactly the same whether it's morning or midnight? They do that so you lose your sense of time, so you stay longer, spend more, and forget that the real world is still happening outside. Now, I want you to do the opposite. Build your own reverse casino, a space where everything around you brings you back to reality, back to your work, back to the goals you chose for yourself. I once worked with a writer in New York named Daniel. He was talented, full of ideas, but every year he said the same thing. "I'm going to finish my first book." And yet, after 3 years, he hadn't written more than 20 pages. Not because he lacked energy, but because he lacked an environment for focus. His workspace had 4 monitors, a constantly buzzing phone, and non-stop notifications from Slack, Twitter, email, TikTok, all fighting for his attention. So I asked him to try a 30-day experiment to live in his own reverse casino. Here's what he did. Turned off every notification. Deleted social media from his phone. Kept only a clean desk, a notebook, a pen, and a small board with his goals pinned in front of him. And every time he started work, he put on noise-blocking headphones with calm background music, a ritual to open the door into his deep focus zone. A month later, Daniel sent me the first 100 pages of his book. He said, "I didn't write faster. I just finally heard my own voice more clearly. You see, focus doesn't appear out of nowhere. It grows out of the environment you build for it. Every time you leave your phone on the desk, you're leaving a small door open for the outside world to walk in. Every open browser tab is an unfinished thought, and every little notification ping is a tug, just strong enough to pull you out of the present moment. That's why you have to protect your focus environment the way you'd protect your home from intruders. Clear your desk every night. Place your goal board where you'll see it first thing in the morning. Play background music that helps your mind slip into deep mode, and most importantly, set boundaries with the world. Because if you don't build a wall around your focus, the world will gladly climb over it and steal it from you, minute by minute. And when you finally stop living in someone else's casino, you'll begin to live inside your own sanctuary, quiet, bright, and filled with things that truly matter. 7. Social boundaries. There's something few people are willing to admit. Not every relationship in your life helps you grow. Some people are like fertilizer. They make you stronger, clearer, more inspired. They make you want to become a better version of yourself. But others are more like weeds. They drain your energy, take up your time, pull your focus away. And sometimes they don't even realize they're doing it. I once had a patient, a very talented man, who kept saying, "My life just isn't moving forward." He worked hard, but he was constantly exhausted. When we reviewed his weekly schedule together, I noticed something interesting. He spent hours every week in just for fun meetups, conversations that went nowhere, and with friends who only called when they needed to vent or unload negativity. He told me, "I don't want to say no. I don't want them to think I've changed." And I said, "You haven't changed, you're just growing." You see, in behavioral psychology, we call this unconscious social attachment. The human brain craves connection because it feels safe even when those connections quietly drain us. And if you don't set boundaries, people will unconsciously fill up all your deep focus time, the most precious hours of your day. So start by reevaluating your relationships. Look around and ask yourself, who gives me energy, ideas, and inspiration? And who leaves me heavy, tired, or doubting myself? The first group, they're the fertilizer for your growth. Treasure them. Be intentional with the time you spend with them. The second group, the weeds. You don't have to hate them. You just have to stop letting them overgrow in the garden of your mind. One method I often teach my students is something I call social scheduling. Instead of letting people drop into your day whenever they want, you decide when to connect. For example, only take personal calls after 6 p.m., meet friends on weekends only, or set a no-talk day midweek to recharge your energy. At first, you might worry that people will think you're cold or selfish. But in reality, this is how you protect your best energy, so you can give it to the right people at the right time. Remember, you can't nurture your garden if you keep letting the weeds grow wild. Sometimes, loving yourself isn't about giving more. It's about knowing when to stop. 8. The deep work ritual. I've always believed that focus isn't some kind of magic that appears only when we feel inspired. It's a habit, and like every habit, it begins with a ritual. I call it the deep work ritual. It's a sequence of small, repeated actions, a kind of prelude that tells your brain, it's time to do real work now. Picture this. Every time you brew your coffee, tidy your desk, play soft instrumental music, and start a timer, you're sending your brain a chain of conditioned signals. Just like an artist before a performance, they don't rush straight onto the stage. They take a deep breath, tune their instrument, listen to the opening notes. All small actions that prepare the body and mind for full presence. I once had a client named Laura, a freelance writer who often told me, "I just can't find the inspiration to start." So I asked her, "Do you have any kind of ritual before you write?" She laughed. "No, I just sit down and hope it shows up." I told her, "Then let's stop waiting for inspiration. Let's summon it." She began building her own ritual. Every morning, she played the same piano track, made a cup of tea, cleared her desk, and set a 60-minute timer. After 2 weeks, she told me, "I don't need to wait for inspiration anymore. As soon as I make the tea, my brain wants to write. That's the power of neural conditioning. When repeated actions are paired with positive emotion, the brain automatically links them together. So if you think you lack focus, maybe you just haven't taught your brain how to begin. Choose your own simple sequence of cues. It could be the smell of coffee, a certain sound, a specific light, or a familiar workspace. Keep it consistent, same order, same time, every day. And gradually, something magical happens. You no longer have to push yourself to start. Your brain already knows when the music begins, when the timer ticks, when the cup touches the table. The outside world fades away, and you step into the deep zone, where it's just you, your work, and full presence. That's not magic. It's calm crafted through ritual. And anyone can build it if they truly want to live and work with complete attention. 9. Understanding attention residue. I want you to picture this. You're sitting at your desk, fully immersed in your work, thoughts flowing, ideas connecting, and suddenly your phone buzzes. Just a small message. Hey, have you seen this video? You tell yourself, just 30 seconds. But here's the thing, those 30 seconds can steal 30 minutes of your focus, and you might not even notice it. In cognitive psychology, we call this attention residue. It means that when you switch from task A to task B, your mind doesn't fully jump to the new task, it leaves a part of its energy, a fragment of thought, still stuck in the previous one. It's like walking out of a room, but leaving the door half open. The draft still blows through, and the space never truly becomes quiet. I once worked with a young entrepreneur in Seattle who told me he worked 10 hours a day, but never felt productive. When we reviewed his routine, I found that he had over 15 tabs open on his computer, each one a story left unfinished. A half-written email, a half-read LinkedIn post, a half-watched video. I told him, "You're not working 10 hours a day, you're splitting your brain into 15 pieces." A study from Stanford University found that each time you get interrupted, even for just 10 seconds, your brain can take 20 to 30 minutes to return to its original level of deep focus. That means if you check your phone 10 times a day, you could be losing more than 4 hours of productivity without realizing it. You're not tired because you're doing too much. You're tired because you're constantly picking up the broken pieces of your attention. Try observing yourself today. Every time you get pulled into something that feels like just 30 seconds, notice how long it actually takes to get back into your original flow. You'll be surprised not by how long it takes, but by how your brain never truly returns the same way. It always has to restart, like a computer forced to reboot every time you open another window. So if you truly want to reclaim your focus, start closing the extra doors. Keep just one tab open. Put your phone on silent during your deep work blocks. And when you begin a task, stay with it, fully. Sometimes, the difference between a creative genius and someone who's always stuck in place isn't talent, it's this. One protects the continuity of their attention. The other keeps dropping it one interruption at a time.